This is the Youth Soccer Revolution Podcast, episode number 11. Thank you again for joining us for the Youth Soccer Revolution Podcast, episode number 11. I'm your host, Ernesto Diaz. Today we had the opportunity to speak to Elijah Michaels. Elijah is a freshman at Western Michigan University. I knew that he would be able to give a lot of specific information about training and developing as a goalkeeper. Most of the information that we provide for the Youth Soccer Revolution podcast is mainly players and coaches discussing creativity and player development, but we haven't had the opportunity to get a goalkeeper on. And Elijah is very young, but he's also a very smart kid, and I wanted to bring him on so he can share his journey through the player development process with us. I also wanted to bring on his mother so that she could discuss a little bit with us about her own experience as a parent and having a child going through the development process. I think it's also important that we learn from the parents and get their perspective and their thoughts on the development process. Some of the things that worked for them, some of the things that maybe we should look out for. Although a lot of the things that Elijah discusses can be implemented with field players as well. But again, I want you to keep in mind that he is a goalkeeper. I know he goes into good detail about ID camps and how they helped him out. I just want to remind you that if you like the show and you think it's worthwhile, I would appreciate it if you shared it with others or gave us a 5-star review on iTunes. I do the best I can to bring you insight, tools, and resources that you can use to help you in your player development, not only as a coach or a parent, but also as an administrator. So at first, we started off by asking Elijah to tell us a little bit about himself so we can get to know him better and to tell us about how he got started playing soccer.
Like everybody else, I started with ASO and started when I was 4. I worked my way up into travel, and up until U9, I was playing on the field, and then one game, our goalkeeper got hurt and kind of got thrown in there and kind of fell in love. So ever since U9, I've played in goal, and I've had a blast with it. I've played for Red Arrow and TKO and also for the Mattawan High School team. And
yeah, and Elijah, let's take it back just a little bit more to kind of gain a little bit more understanding. You said you started playing around 4 years old. What organization were you playing with at that time?
I was playing with ASO at that time.
And can you take me to the progress of ASO? Did your parents put you in it? Was it something you wanted to do?
Honestly, I don't remember.
We were coaches with our oldest son, so okay. Elijah just kind of got thrown into it and didn't really have a choice, at that age as to what he wanted to do. We just continued on coaching him.
Yeah, but Ann, I'm sure that you wanted to get him into soccer because you saw a lot of the benefits with your older child,
right?
As well,
right.
Okay, so it was sort of a family decision to kind of put him in and started playing. And Elijah, can you tell us if you remember when you started liking going out and playing, or if you enjoyed it from the beginning?
I'm pretty sure I enjoyed it from the beginning. I just liked the physicality it took and just like all the hard work needed and like the constant pace of the game.
Okay, and go ahead.
There weren't any breaks per se other than like halftime, of course, but it wasn't like football where you ran for 10 seconds and then had to stop and wait and all that. It was a constant play.
Okay. Then you said you started playing keeper at around age 9. Were you still playing ASO at that time?
At that time, I was playing Red Arrow.
ASO and Red Arrow.
Was I?
Yep. ASO
and Red Arrow.
Okay, and then eventually you started playing for a bigger club. You went to play for TKO. How old were you at that time?
I was 11 at that time. Then I dual rostered with Red Arrow and TKO.
What made you fall in love with soccer? You talked a little bit about the physicality. That's when you were younger. What about today? What makes you love soccer so much?
I would have to say the same thing. It just like the constant pace. I mean, the pace has gotten a lot faster now, which I love. It just being a team sport, kind of having to rely on someone else as well and being relied on. I don't know. I kind of like the challenge, I guess. Definitely the brotherhood between all my teammates. You definitely grow bonds, and you can't get that with every single sport.
Okay. Do you play other sports as well?
I used to, but right now it's mainly soccer.
What other sports did you play? And when?
I've pretty much tried it all. I played baseball, basketball, football even. I ran track. I played golf every now and then.
At what point did you decide to go with just soccer?
Like mainly when I hit high school age, I knew like that's what I wanted to do in college and beyond, and I knew I needed to focus on one sport if I wanted to, I guess, go anywhere with it. So I chose soccer.
And you said that was in high school? Were you a freshman?
Yeah.
And Elijah, tell us, who do you think had the biggest influence on you playing soccer? I know that we talked earlier, your mom kind of threw you in there because it was kind of something the family did. But who do you think had the biggest influence on you continuing to play?
I really can't pinpoint one person. Everybody had a little influence on me in one way or another. I mean, mostly my coaches, like Mike Garrett and some coaches at camps that I go to over the summer.
So you have several people then in your support system.
Right. I can't really pinpoint one person per se.
Okay. And then one of the things that I know has been talked a lot about in soccer development, they talk about kids playing outside of formal training. Do you recall any time, whether it was your brother or your parents playing at home or just your friends outside of formal training hours?
I do, yeah. Me and my friends every now and then have like pickup games, like small-sided games at somebody's house or just like in our front yard even, just with family and friends.
Okay, well, growing up, how often do you think that would happen besides formal training with your team?
Besides formal training, I don't know, like in season maybe once a week, during the summer more often.
Yep, I can understand that.
Yeah.
And then you talked earlier, you said you did specialize at around the 9th grade. You decided to just stick with soccer.
Right.
And we touched a little bit on this earlier, but what do you think has helped you succeed in soccer? You talked about your support system. You talked about specializing in it after 9th grade.
Mm-hmm.
What else do you think has helped you succeed?
The passion for the sport has definitely helped a lot. It helped with my attitude, wanting to train, wanting to get better, wanting to succeed. Definitely the support system from everybody that I've met along the way, played with, played against even.
Yeah. So, I mean, your competitors bring out the best in you.
Right.
Along with your teammates. Yeah, I can see that. What about, did you watch soccer on TV?
Oh, yeah, big time. I always try to watch as many games as I possibly can, even if I don't even know the teams. You can always learn from watching players better than you. You never stop learning.
Yeah, you brought up a good point. I mean, it doesn't even have to be professionals, even some of your opponents. If you watch them play, if they're good players,
exactly,
that can help you develop as a player as well.
Yep.
What about your parents? You said that they, and Ann, maybe you can add to this as well. Were your parents soccer players as well?
No, they were not.
Not as kids, as adults.
I see.
But that's only because our kids played, so it was like, well, we got to play.
I see.
Understand the whole game.
No, that's a good way to understand the game. You're right, by playing.
Yep.
We, as coaches, sometimes we get frustrated because a child can't do one thing or the other, but once you get in there, you realize it's not that easy.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good way to understand it. So, Elijah, now I want to get a little deeper into your development. And as a serious athlete, you know, we experience lows and highs during your development and just your whole career as a whole. And oftentimes you reach a point when you may doubt yourself or your ability or your skill. Can you tell us about a time when you felt at your lowest point as a player? Maybe a time when you may you may have thought that you were going to give up playing soccer?
I would have to say starting the college recruiting process was rough. The summer between my sophomore and junior year, I started going to the college ID camps and trying to get myself in front of coaches, and I don't really know. I just did not perform well, wasn't getting the attention that I wanted and thought that I should have gotten, and it was just rough for me that entire summer, and I was really considering just taking it easy on the soccer thing and not playing in college.
Yeah, so you had, the recruiting process. You went out to some camps, some ID camps. Athletes, sometimes we put a lot of pressure on ourselves. You obviously did a good job because where you are today, but you probably put a lot of pressure on yourself to perform, and so you wanted to be the best out there.
Right.
And we doubt ourselves sometimes when things don't go exactly as we planned. Even if we have one little mistake, we get down on ourselves.
Right.
And so at that point, you kind of doubted yourself a little bit, even though I'm sure you had a lot of good plays as well, but you might have had one or two. They weren't as good, and so that made you doubt your ability a little bit.
Right.
And can you tell us what you learned from that experience?
You can't get caught up in the past because, as each camp after the next camp after the last one, it just got worse and worse. And I went into camps thinking, oh, I'm just going to play really bad, and you just can't ponder on the past and got to keep playing and keep giving it your all. One coach may like you and the next may love you, and
yeah, and that's a good lesson. I mean, and especially as an athlete, because it could happen during the game when your team may need you the most. If you have one play, you can't keep yourself down. You got to get up and perform to the highest level.
Ernesto, with all of that, with Elijah and watching him grow, say from the freshman year to now the college that he's going to, those coaches have watched him seriously since he was a freshman, and they didn't say much of anything for probably the first 2.5 years. And then after that, they started saying stuff and then really very much interested in him. And that's the thing with these ID camps is you go once, you're there for a week, you got to show off, and that pressure is big time for a lot of these kids. Especially if the coaches are not speaking to them, which happened a lot to Elijah. It was just kind of but it might have been his position as well as a goalkeeper. Now, field players got more attention than the goalkeepers did. So he specialized in a goalkeeping camp, which really, I'll throw a name out there is Tony DeChico. He started going to his camp, and Tony wrote him a letter of recommendation. Because Tony, this guy that did the World Cup for the women, saw it in him. So it really makes a difference as to really what kind of camps you go to. It's rough for these kids. They need to start very young, and it's really sad to say. 7th and 8th grade is when they really need to be putting out there if they want to go to a certain school. It's sad that it has to start that young, but that's the direction it's all headed to. And these ID camps are it. It's not other camps. It's the ID camps.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good takeaway.
Yeah.
Start. The reality is that you have to get started earlier.
Oh yeah.
If you want to get there.
Yep.
It wasn't our choice, but that's just the reality of it.
Right. And what do kids really know what college they want to go to in 6th, 7th, 8th grade? Most don't.
Right.
So.
Okay. Anything else about that, about ID2 camps?
They're really good opportunities because there are quite a few coaches at most of them, and you can get yourself out there, but they're very nerve-wracking and very stressful.
For the parents as well, Ann?
Yeah, because, you know how much money you're throwing out there for them to do these ID camps. I don't think I would have spent the amount of money that we spent over the last few years to send him to these things if I didn't know he had the ability. And as a parent, as a coach, I expect more out of him. I expect more out of those kids that we coached. So I didn't think he was like the best, like a lot of coaches do, or a lot of parents do. I wanted more out of him as he grew, so me spending the money on these ID camps was something he wanted, and we did. But that's the sad part is, you could spend, I don't know, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a year or a summer throwing out these ID camps because each of them are $600, $700, $800 a piece. If I could do it again, I would do it again, definitely for him. We might take a different route and looking at different ways. I think the goalkeeping camp he went to was the ultimate, and that's what I think totally changed his view on camps and stuff. He didn't really care for the college camps. But this goalkeeping one, he did.
Okay, and that was for training to improve, not necessarily to be looked at.
Right.
Right.
Okay. And which one was that one? Are you able to tell us?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was Soccer Plus.
That was the Tony DiCicco one.
Okay. And where was that one at?
I went to Indiana for it, but they have multiple camps across the nation. They're usually held at colleges. The one that I went to was goalkeeper specific, which a lot of them are, but they also have field player development academies, and they even have a club. I think it's, where is it at?
Oh, Connecticut.
Yeah, in Connecticut. I mean, they're phenomenal camps. You have tons of college coaches, professional players, coaching them and training kids from pretty much any age and any skill level. They're really good camps.
Okay, is that your class?
Yeah.
We just talked a little bit about athletes experiencing high and low levels during their career. And you just told us about a difficult time in your young career. Can you tell us now about a time when you felt really successful and you felt your hard work had paid off?
I mean, I've lost many games, but I've also won huge games. I've won titles. I've received honors and all that stuff. But when I really felt like my hard work was paying off, or it paid off, was when I did commit to Western. Like that, just having a childhood dream come true of making it to the next level and playing D1 ball. It's just very rewarding, I guess. And looking back, I finally realized like what I had put into it and what I had done and where I have been. A proud moment for myself, I guess.
So what did you learn from that experience?
I learned that it may not seem like it's benefiting you at the time, but you gotta put the work in and you cannot slack off at any point. And it may not seem like it's worth it, but someday, somewhere down the road, it may not be exactly what you want, but it will pay off.
Yeah, that's a great takeaway, Elijah, because, I mean, not only is that for soccer, but that's for a lot of things.
Right.
You know, when we tell kids, stay in school because it'll pay off later, but in terms of development as well, when we have those hot days, those cold days, when it's not as fun to be out there training, but you do it because you want to reach that next level, and you are one of the select few that are going to that next level. A lot of the kids have to stop playing after high school.
Right.
So let's go back a little bit more to your development today. What is one thing you're doing right now that is helping you develop as a player?
Playing with TKO.
And that's a premier club. Some people listen to this that may not be familiar with TKO. So it's a premier club in the state of Michigan.
Right. And we are playing MRL, which is the Midwest Regional League.
Yeah, so that's even higher than premier.
Right. So we're playing very tough competition, playing with other athletes that are moving on to the next level. It's just fast-paced. I'm trying to get myself to be as ready as possible.
Yeah, so that's the one thing you're doing right now is trying to get as closest to the level that you're going to be playing at a Division I school.
Right.
is just trying to make sure that you're prepared for it, and when you get there, it's not a big shock. And definitely by playing at an MRL level will help you get there. What is the best advice that you have received as a player?
That's a tough one.
What advice would you want to give other players?
Hate to sound cliche, I guess just don't give up on yourself or anybody around you.
That's a great point, Elijah, because like you said earlier, you went through a difficult time in the ID camp, and you didn't give up. You could have given up, but you're following your own advice. So that's great advice to give other players, because that's exactly what you did. You have results. So that's great advice. Just don't give up. And you're right, it sounds cliche, but believe in yourself, keep working hard. What about one of your personal habits that has helped you reach success as a player?
I guess my terrible memory.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I don't necessarily remember games from this past season. I don't remember what happened in them. That can be good because you don't want to live on a bad game and be thinking about a bad game that you had a month ago, a week ago, yesterday, while you're needed today.
Yeah.
I mean, even with good games, if you have an amazing game 1 week, you don't want to be going into the next game full of yourself and thinking that you're going to even do better. And, I mean, have confidence, but don't be arrogant and not necessarily thinking about past games will mentally prepare you, I guess.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's no reason to look at the past, because as a player you always have another game coming up, and that game is more important than the last one because you have to win that one. So yeah, definitely forget about that game, whether it was good or bad. Mm-hmm. You're going to try to outperform yourself no matter how good you did.
Right.
Imagine you were born 5 years ago, so you're 5 years old today, and you have all the knowledge you have right now about soccer, and you want to start playing. What would you do to develop as a soccer player?
I would just play as much as possible. I would go to as many camps, play on as many teams as I possibly could, be coached by different coaches, play with different types of players, different ages even. Because everywhere you go, everywhere you play, everybody that you play with, against, you learn something new. Maybe not stick with the same team. That sounds bad.
No, I think I understand what you mean by that. Well, you want to expose yourself to other people, right, to learn from them.
Right. And a way with going with that is just keep improving and keep raising the level of play as you increase in your skill, age and stuff. And
no, I mean that's a good answer. You nailed it. I mean, I think so anyway. You said play as much as you can. I mean, especially when you're that young, you're full of energy.
Right.
And you can play at home, you can play at your games, before the games, after the games. So yeah, and that's how you'll learn. That they say that the game is the best teacher, and so you're out there playing all the time. Eventually, like you said, with different teams, different teammates, different coaches, eventually something's going to stick, and you're going to learn whether you like it or not.
Exactly.
What about you, Ann?
I would probably play as a kid. I did. Uh-huh. My older sister did. I think the love of the sport would have grown even deeper inside of me as an adult. And knowing, I think for coaching, I think we did okay coaching. We spent many years and many classes, improving ourselves and stuff. But, there's always that thing about playing with older kids. And I always tell people not to. But if your child, like Elijah, for example, he was a U16 player. We had him playing on our U19 team, and he handled himself just right. And kids that can, I would say, let them do that. Maybe not full time, but playing with the older kids. And I think he learned a few things from those older teams. Did we move him up all the time? No. For the most part, when he was younger, he did for a couple of years, and then as he was entering high school, he did. And then he started playing with his own age group, in between those. But I think that they learn a lot from the older kids because they're a little bit more skilled, even 2-year difference. There's some skill levels that are different. I don't know, playing on different, coaching, playing on teams with different coaches is really hard to say, yeah, do that. But hindsight, yeah, that I think kids should. And I think clubs that force the kids to play with different coaches every 2 years, I think it's good as long as those coaches are good, because the kids will pick up something from each of those coaches, and hopefully it's for the better.
Yes.
Sometimes you don't get that, which is the scary part for a parent and a player. Club hopping, I don't really necessarily agree with that. If that's where the coach is, then and the team, then do it. If you want your kid to improve and he or she's wanting that.
Okay. And can you give, Elijah, you as well, can you give one piece of guidance for players or parents who want to maximize their soccer development? And, I think you guys touched on those a little bit already, talking about camps, playing at the highest level as possible. Anything else that you want to add to that?
Yeah, just pretty much expose yourself to as many different experiences and situations that you can.
Yeah, no, that's a great point because, right now when we're trying to expose the kids a little bit to futsal, some of the parents just kind of look at you weird and say, well, what's futsal or why should I do that? But you're right, just experiencing different things and exposing the kids to different things. I mean, you give them a little shock and, they might be good here, but what about with this? Can you still control the ball here and can you dominate here? So, yeah, you're right. I agree with that.
I would say as a parent, listen to what your kids want, even though you might not necessarily agree. Listen to them because they know what they want, deep down.
Yeah, great point. Yeah, for the parents, they need to know that as well. Anything else that we didn't discuss that you think needs to be said about player development?
I guess just be happy with what you're doing. Sure, you'll have points where you're going to hate soccer, mainly in those tough portions or when you're in the middle of a sprint after practice or whatever. But soccer and every other sport is a love-hate relationship, but you definitely have to be happy with what you're doing and where you're going.
Anything else, Anne?
I don't think so. He pretty much covered a lot of it.
Yeah, you did. So I appreciate your time again, and I know we kind of had a little rough time trying to get it all set up, but again, I appreciate your help. And Elijah, good luck to you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for thinking of us, Ernesto.
I want to wish Elijah all the best, and we will continue to follow him at WMU. One thing I do tell kids is that their development doesn't end after high school. It's something that it's difficult for them to understand because most of their travel and high school careers come to an end. Some kids who may not be good enough to play college yet can continue training and developing well into their early 20s to improve and get better at, and one day get the opportunity to play college. I think right now Elijah has yet to reach his pinnacle. He's still going to get better, especially now with the coaches at Western Michigan. They're going to push him to new levels he's never been before, and he's going to be an even better player than he ever was. And you just never know where he may end up. Don't forget that you can find all the show notes on the youthsoccerrevolution.com website. If you would like to reach out to me, you can find me at Ernesto at youthsoccerrevolution.com. Always love getting feedback from all of you. You can always go on the website and give us some feedback through the comment section on each episode. And I'll catch you on episode 12.